Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Senate Committee on Institutions, today being April 15th, 2021. We are meeting to talk about various sections of the Capitol bill, and also today we're going to have some conversation about a presentation that was made by the administration about 5 separate buckets, but today we're going to deal with 2 of those buckets. I hope. I don't see everybody on the witness list here yet. But welcome, Commissioner Curley. We have, don't see anybody else on the screen just yet, but for the edification of those on YouTube who have never been involved in this process before, and for our witnesses to recognize that we have 3 new members of the committee, although one of them has been on here before, and 1 brand new legislator. We also have a potential YouTube audience of millions who have never been involved in these kinds of discussions, and I try to take everything literally from the 50,000-foot level to begin before you dive any deeper into the weeds. The meaning of that is that I ask each witness as they come on to not only introduce the subject matter they're talking about, but to give us a brief biographical sketch of who they are and how they fit into state government before we get into the weeds of why you're actually here. For today's purposes, I'm Joe Benning, the chair of the committee, and will be your host for this afternoon's proceedings. We have Senator Mazza from Grand Isle, Senator Ingalls from Essex Orleans, Senator Parent from Franklin, and Senator McCormick from Windsor along with us. Commissioner Curley, I believe we actually, and I'm calling you commissioner, but you're secretary. Did I demote you on purpose, I wonder? Sorry about that. You are first on my list today, and just for the committee's edification, I did hear a presentation that was made by the administration a few days ago, and I've asked for 3 parts of that discussion of 5 different buckets to come into our committee, because eventually we'll be talking about what they are about to present to us here today. So Secretary Curley, welcome to Senate Institutions, and I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Senator Benning. It's great to be here. For the record, my name is Lindsay Curley. I am the Secretary of Commerce and Community Development, and I will answer to Commissioner or Secretary or Lindsay, so no worries about any demotions. In my role, just to follow your lead in my role as the agency secretary, I am helping the agency push the mission forward, which is to help Vermonters improve their quality of life and build strong communities. And we do that through providing grants and technical assistance and advocacy through 3 departments in our agency: the Department of Economic Development, who is led by Commissioner Joan Goldstein, who you'll hear from in just a few minutes, as well as the Housing and Community Development Department and the Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing. So I'll just sort of set the stage really quick, and then I'm going to hand it over to Commissioner Goldstein to give you some more detail on the economic development portion proposal of the ARPA plan. So as you mentioned, Senator Benning, you heard the administration give a presentation not too long ago, and what we're really trying to share with people is that we have this once in a lifetime opportunity to invest in our state. As we traveled around our state before the pandemic hit, we learned so much about the barriers to recruitment for businesses and the inability to grow the economy because of broadband challenges, water, sewer, lack of housing, lack of childcare. So, Vermont communities need help in order to expand their economic foundation. They need these investments that we're proposing that you'll hear a little bit more about today. And it's not just the economic development piece of it. It really is, as you mentioned, there's a few other buckets, and all of them really do blend in nicely to economic development. And we feel that with these proposals, we can provide for opportunities in workforce expansion, growth in all 14 counties, a healthier climate, and ultimately a more affordable and competitive state. So you'll hear from Commissioner Goldstein about a capital grants fund where we invest in deploying regional projects that are shovel ready, and she'll tell you about some of those. Something that folks have been asking about is, what about workforce development? Well, there are a lot of dollars available every year for workforce development in our state, and we're going to continue to do that really good work. But in this particular proposal, we're proposing things that will build capacity. So jobs will come as a result of it, but a lot of the workforce development is already happening. And as I mentioned, the federal government continues to send a lot of money our way to do workforce development. What you'll hear about these priorities and these proposals is that we want to be very clear about where and how every dollar of this money is being spent so that Vermonters can see the value. And they want to, we want to make sure that they know that we're not squandering it by special interests. We want to make sure that we're building real infrastructure that will have the greatest long-term economic benefits to Vermont's families and our economy. And we want to make sure that it's transformational, right? It's go big and transform our ability to expand the economy in every community, as I mentioned, every county in Vermont, and not just the areas of the state with the most people or the most economic development tools in their toolbox. So throughout the last decade, communities in Vermont have been planning for the future of their towns, and they have tangible plans and shovel-ready projects designed to boost the economy, help their residents thrive, and attract families to the area, as well as to combat climate change. And again, you're going to hear more about this in just a minute, but this package really is about people. Each and every proposal aims to help people and families and communities. So with that, I want to turn it over to Commissioner Goldstein, who is going to take you into a little more detail on the economic development bucket of this ARPA proposal. So Commissioner, you have the floor.
Thanks, Secretary, and good afternoon. This is a committee that we don't often present in front of, so it's a pleasure to see some newer faces, and thank you for asking us to come in. A little bit about my...
Just so you know, we are better looking than most of the committees you come in front of.
Okay. Excellent.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And a little bit of my background. I've been at the agency 6 years. I was appointed by Governor Shumlin and reappointed by Governor Scott. Commissioner of Economic Development. We're a small department. We have 21 people. And on any given year, we typically do things like workforce grants to businesses that are training or retraining their employees. We also have an employment growth incentive program, VEGI, that we use for businesses that are going to be growing their workforce. So on any given year, we typically do things like a few $1 million, let's say, except last year. So last year, as you know, we did all the economic recovery grants and kind of blew that out of the water. So there are hundreds of millions of dollars that went to businesses in need. And we kind of repurposed the entire agency was repurposed, and the department primarily was involved in getting assistance out as quickly as possible. And before doing this gig, I was the Regional Economic Development Director for the Green Mountain Economic Development Corp, which is based in White River, but handles most of Windsor County and Orange County, just to give perspective. And before that, I'm from New York, and I'm a newcomer. I've been here 16 years. So I think Secretary Curley set the table very well. The economic development portion of the governor's proposal is $143 million. And that's over a period of 3 years, more or less. I think we have from now until December of 24 on this discretionary pot of funds. And the lion's share is, as Secretary Curley pointed out, capital investment grant program. That's 90 million that we've allocated or proposed, and 50 million will be to continue with the economic development, the economic recovery grants. We recognize that part of recovery is taking care of the acute need, that's the 50 million, and then the longer term recovery and resiliency, which is the capital investment. Now, if there's also 3 million in there, which is all about the expedited permitting, right? So we have all these projects, right? We've got water, wastewater, and broadband, and these economic development projects, but we're not going to be very well suited if we get jammed up in permitting. even though the timeline to spend these dollars is a lot longer than last year's funding, 3 years isn't much when you think about the long-term nature of capital investment projects, when you think about the permitting timeline and the amount of work that goes into bringing some of these things to fruition. So that's kind of the package. How did we get to these amounts and these reasons? The 50 million is an estimate with a derived figure. At the end of last year, when we sent out the results of the second economic recovery grant, they looked like there was about $500 million worth of unmet need, which was defined as kind of revenue impact of the businesses from, the 2020 results versus 2019, less whatever help they received heretofore, which was actually up till September 30th. And we also know, though, at the turn of the new year, there was additional funding opportunities through PPP and other SBA programs. And the estimate, I think the last I saw, was something upwards of like a little over 400 million had been applied for. So we think 50 million is a good kind of derived figure of that would be the need. We also, in H315, which just cleared, I guess it just cleared last week, that will set us up. We need to set up the grant program for this round, and it'll be it's a very prescribed statute in terms of who is eligible and how we'll do the calculation. So that is the economic recovery grant portion. The 90 million is an interesting figure. So again, as I said when I started out, we just, we do workforce grants and we do VEGI. Those are typically the two kind of state-oriented grant programs, but we also work on a number of federal programs, one of which is the Northern Border Regional Commission grant. And it used to be just for the Northern Border counties of Vermont, but a few years ago it was expanded to the entire state of Vermont. And over the last 5 or 6 years, that amount has been increasing again and again. So what we've done is gone out to the regions to ask for what are their projects that need funding. And we've collected this list, over the years, and it needs to be refined and curated and really, used as a very, very good source. But as an indicator, when we add up all the projects, it comes to around the $90 million figure. So that was a good kind of sort of, prompt to say, okay, typically our programs, they do meet with some critique now and again. And oftentimes people will say, well, why don't you just do an appropriation instead of doing all these mechanics to these programs? And so now we have this once in a lifetime opportunity with an appropriation. And so many times people talk about projects and they talk about their funding sources, and there's typically a gap. And so now we have an opportunity to say, okay, let this be the catalyst fund that's going to make the project happen. And the types of projects that we're talking about are things that will, we will create criteria, right? But there's no sort of mystery in the types of criteria. It'll be things like, does this improve grand list valuation? Does this create or maintain jobs, quality jobs? Does this take a property and enhance? Does it take a vacant property and put it to good use? Is a business able to expand in this particular area? So there are a number of, sort of weights we will give to that. Is this of importance to the region? Is it more than just one town that will benefit? Is there community support and backing? How well are they leveraging other funds, right? So those are some of the ideas around how we would grade them. And why do we want to do this? Really, it's about the long-term diversification, resilience, and thereby stability of the economy, right? We need to constantly diversify our portfolio of businesses. We've got great small businesses in the state. When they want to grow, sometimes there are challenges, right? Again, we have these two programs that we have typically, and not everyone meets criteria. Not everyone is able to tap into it. So this is an opportunity to change that for the better. So some examples, we have a daycare center in Randolph that otherwise, I think the cost figure was something in the millions. And yes, they're applying for NBRC and they're applying for CDBG. So they'll go through every source, but it's clear that the expense of building in Vermont has always been a little bit more expensive than the appraisal value. That's pre-COVID. Post-COVID, the lumber prices, everything has, it's tripled or doubled. I don't know. Each day I hear a different story about availability. So the state has a role in helping, make those projects happen. So there's always a gap in these projects. There's another project, there's a slaughterhouse in Addison County that needs to be enhanced. Why? To increase the capability and the capacity for, our land-based activities and economy. There are industrial parks in Johnson and in Bristol that don't have water, wastewater. So when they have these fledgling businesses that are growing, they can't accommodate it. They'll have to move out of the town, or worse, move out of the state. Some of the great food success stories that we have get purchased by out-of-state businesses. That's not typically the end of the story. It can be, but there is a vulnerability because then the larger entity has choices in where they invest and grow. So this is our opportunity to co-invest and create good things, make sure that good things happen. I could give more examples, or I could stop there for questions, whatever the pleasure of the committee is.
Anybody have any questions thus far? I don't see anybody chomping at the bit to ask questions, Joan.
Okay.
Anything else you want to tell us about the project? The proposal, I'm sorry.
No, I think, again, the way to look at this, concurrent with the ARPA proposals, of course, are the governor's original budget ask of brownfields remediation monies, and these work very well in conjunction. Many of these projects utilize many sources of funds. Brownfields is one of them. There's also what we're calling project-based TIF, which is very, very important for rural areas. So just a little bit about that to just help inform. The project-based TIF is where a smaller town, instead of having a wide TIF district boundary, could do it for a particular project. And we're hearing some pushback about why do we need it now when towns are getting all this money from ARPA? So we just want to urge everyone to understand that these are expensive projects. These are multi-million-dollar projects. And so if the town could leverage some of the ARPA funds that they're getting with the idea of also incurring debt, and then having that debt service being helped by, the usage of a percentage of the ed fund proceeds, that's a good outcome.
Just for the edification of our listening audience, could you tell us what a TIF is?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm going on acronyms. So a TIF is a tax incremental financing mechanism, and TIFs are used everywhere in the country. But the difference in Vermont is that what happens is the town will define a TIF district, and what that means is development that occurs there. In order for that development to occur, there needs to be some public infrastructure improvements. The public infrastructure improvements are then paid for by the town through a debt vehicle. But when they pay back the debt, they could use the incremental revenue from that private property enhancement, right? The idea is that they take a empty lot, they build something on it. Guess what? The town is able to collect more revenue from that particular private sector developer. And then when the town gets those funds, they could hold back a portion of the ed fund to pay back the debt that they incurred on the infrastructure in order to make that private development happen. And so many large towns have taken advantage of this. because it's very, very complex. And in the rural world, people are saying this is not fair. How do we put the smaller towns and villages on an equal footing? So this year in the legislature, we had S33, I think it's in House right now, but there is pushback that the ARPA funds are kind of alleviating the need. And I'm just here to say that the types of projects that we're talking about are so large, they typically multi-million dollars, that even if the municipalities get some money from ARPA, that's not enough, right? If we know that there's probably about $150 million going to municipalities, we've got 251 towns. It doesn't take much to know that it's less than $1 million on average that each town is getting. And a very small wastewater improvement project is in excess of that. So it's pieces. Economic development is always pieces of the puzzle. And ARPA funds are one piece, TIF debt is another. And we want to make sure that our towns and villages and businesses that want to grow have all the tools that we can make available through this opportunity.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Did I put everybody to sleep?
No, it's very informative. Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, I don't know if there's any other evidence you wish to provide this afternoon, but now is the time. I'm also missing my next witness at the moment, so I'm open for conversation.
Well, did you hear that it's supposed to snow tomorrow?
Yes, I actually have been paying very close attention to that. I think Senator Ingalls and I are out of the woods for the most of that. It seems to be limited to below Route 2 and west of the Green Mountains. So I'm hoping that stays the case.
Hopefully it's a typical spring snow and it will come and go quickly.
Well, it better be, because I put my snow blower away for the winter already.
Oh, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
That was
How long
probably
have you
what did
lived
it.
in Vermont?
Senator
we're
Ingalls,
In April.
Senator Ingalls, you were
People are-
muted there for a moment.
And my boat's going in Sunday, so I don't have my ice breaking gear on it. So I hope it comes and goes fast.
Well, the ice went out at Joe's Pond, so that's something to celebrate too.
Yeah.
Did anybody win locally? They haven't found out who won that day.
I don't know who won. It was not me.
It may be in today's paper, but I haven't seen it yet.
Probably was Joe.
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah, no rig.
Well,
All
anyway,
right.
I want to thank you for having us this afternoon, and I offer to help you with your next witness, but I'm pretty sure that I won't do any of it justice.
All right. Thank you both for coming, and hopefully we'll see you again sometime.
Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
very much.
Good
Bye-bye.
afternoon.
See you.
So, committee, while we are waiting for our next witness, Denise, I'm not sure if you've heard anything from Mr. Hanford yet, but I'd like the committee to know in toto that I was in Senate Natural Resources this morning talking about the Adirondack language. And just so you know, I received subsequent legal conversations via emails that went between John Groveman from VNRC and Mike O'Grady, Ledge Counsel. The upshot is, first, VNRC has not made a commitment to appeal the issuance of a permit by DEC. That is their right, that is their potential option, but they have not made that decision yet. In the meantime, the conversations between Mike O'Grady and Mr. Groveman have been very interesting because there are legal hurdles that come into play when the legislature injects itself into the mix after someone has applied for a permit. Not when they get the permit, but when they applied for the permit. In this case, not only have they applied, they've also been granted the permit, which makes the legal hurdle a little bit higher. So the upshot is, and Dick McCormick, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I got the sense from Natural Resources that with respect to this particular project, the committee was backing off of its initial concerns. although I don't know that you ever took a vote on it, and I don't know whether you took one this afternoon either. But my sense was that at least the chair was recognizing that this project is a fait accompli. And at this stage, I don't envision anything else being done by Natural Resources on the question of this particular sinking. In the future, however, as Laura Treichman was indicating, rules are being developed. The committee certainly would like to have a hand in how those rules are developed, as they should. It's their jurisdiction. In how to sink a boat if another boat is going to be sunk. And that's also part of the mix, whether you want any more boats sunk in the lake. But at this stage, I think from the Senate's side of things, we are good to go in approaching the House and saying, this is just not language that can stay in the bill. And just to remind you, this is only one sentence in the bill. It simply says the agency shall not grant a permit for the reefing of this particular boat. The agency hadn't done that when the House issued this sentence. The agency has since issued the permit. So it would literally mean, if we were to pass this on the Senate side, going back and saying, agency, you made a mistake, you shouldn't have this at all. And I use this analogy in the committee this morning, that if you are in the criminal world and you're a criminal defendant who goes through a trial process in a court system that has been created by the legislature for that very reason, to determine your guilt or innocence, and they find you not guilty, for the legislature to step in after that and say, no, we don't like that decision, we are going to have another look at this. That's essentially what's going on here. And there are all kinds of hurdles that come into play when you try to do that. So that's, I guess, the long and the short of the good ship Adirondack. Senator Mazza.
You convince one member of the Natural Resources Committee to look positive at this issue?
Well, I think I did with the chair. Whether the other
Member of this
four
committee.
members, I don't know. I wasn't there for that conversation, but perhaps Senator McCormick can fill us in.
Okay, all right, just curious.
It sounds, first of all, we're dealing with double negatives. So to be clear, when the chair just now said that Natural Resources is going to back off, what we are backing off of is we've determined not to oppose the Senate Institutions Committee if the Senate Institutions Committee opposes the House. So, and that's, I'm certainly convinced, proceed on the procedural question. As far as the merits of the sinking of the Adirondack, that debate is moot. It looks like the decision is made and will be honored. I think Natural Resources will then be looking at the underlying policy question going forward. Do we really want to use Lake Champlain as a dump? And that will remain to be discussed.
Can I give you an example, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I have a lot of marinas down here and they cover the whole lakefront. Many of the marinas are out 300 feet with docks. They're way out there with docks. It's getting, you almost can walk across the lake on docks. And this year, one of the marinas went and got a permit to extend those docks another 100 feet. And they went through the Coast Guard and they went through environmental, everything, and they got their permits. There are some folks that say they're out too far. It is blocking. I mean, it's taking up too much of the lake, which is a lake belongs to everyone. And yet these docks are there for rent. So they met all the standards. And that's what, unless you change the law,
Right.
What can you say about that? I mean, you can't say you don't like them because they've met all the standards. Now, if you want to change the law in the future and say you only can go out 100 feet with docks, commercial docks. I keep saying docks.
Yeah.
Dock. So that's all right. But because they met the permitting process, they are legally can sell more dock space. And there are those who say, rightfully so, they're out now so far. I mean, you could, like I said, you can walk halfway across the bay here on docks, and they're selling the dock space for a lot of money. I mean, it's a hell of a revenue.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they met the standard. That's,
They
Well,
did
Senator-
meet the standard.
Yeah,
And
Senator
not
Mazza,
only-
I think you've articulated the position of the Natural Resources Committee on that as well. When I said we're convinced on the procedural question that in this, this is basically a settled matter, the
Yeah,
particular, the
I
Adirondack.
could care less. I don't dive. I don't swim. I don't go in the lake. Doesn't make any difference to me with a boat. And then I saw one senator was saying that there's paint on it. There's everything. Well, it had to meet the standards before you can sink it with lead paint on it and empty the fuel tanks and all the
Yeah.
standards. So you can't make those statements unless you can assure that it is being sunk with all the paint on it and the oil on it and the grease on it. And so that's so much why I know, because like I said, I don't boat, I don't get on the lake, I don't know anything about the lake other than I live near it.
Well, to quote Chuck Berry, that senator, that wasn't me, boss. Must have been some other body.
Senator Mazza, the other thing about that is the marina owner has now vested rights in having that dock remain. I don't think we can come back and make a new rule
That's
that
right.
would apply retroactively without having real clear legislative authority to do that. And I'm not sure whether the legislature could gain that authority.
No. It's all,
Try, but that's another story.
yeah, it's history. That's fine, but you know there are concerns about how far out do you allow a commercial enterprise. The only thing you have to meet is environmental standards and Coast Guard parking. The town insists on parking for every boat. There has to be, I think, one car space or whatever. So, but they met the standards, and that's the way it is. Now, next year, if you want to say you only can put out 39 docks or whatever, that's fine. But you know, it's hard to change now.
Denise, can I ask whether you've heard anything from Mr. Hanford?
No, I have not, but I'm just checking with his assistant.
Who's Mr. Hanford? Where's he from?
Josh Hanford is the Commissioner for the Department of Housing and Community Development.
Oh, okay.
He is one of the people that made a presentation the other day. I'd like the committee to at least get advance notice about.
Oh, okay.
Failing that, I think rather than take a break now that Becky Wasserman has joined us, can we pick up where we left off yesterday on the language in the bill? And I had us. I believe it's section 5. Does that sound right?
I'm proud of you. You too.
Did we finish section 5? Or did we start section 5?
I believe we were just starting at section 5, but let me
Okay.
double check.
Yes, you're right. You were. So Becky, just for your purposes, we're going to need an amendment here that's going to include eliminating line 12 on page 7, which is the sentence about the Adirondack. And I'm still on the hunt apparently for 40 grand for the walleye guys.
25, isn't it? Or 40 for 2
Well,
years.
it's 25 a year. And if we take 10 from historic preservation, they got an extra 10.
Why do we have to take money from anywhere else? We don't have to do that.
Well, we got to find out where Alice hid it. That's the upshot.
I mean, we just make our bill and they make their bill. I mean, we don't worry about where to find. If we replace it, we shouldn't have to worry about replacing 20 grand. I mean, we're talking
Well,
about,
we can't just say we want to give the walleye guys 50 grand and not figure out where that money's going to come from because they've spent it down to the penny. So I'm figuring we've got to locate that 50 grand someplace. Catherine's been very mum about the whole thing, and Eric somehow is not on the screen right now, but I know he's listening.
Let's take it out of a parking garage.
yeah, They'll never miss it. That's overinflated anyway.
Catherine, you're looking like you want to say something.
No, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go try to remember if I can find a spot where it might be.
Catherine knows where it is. She knows, she can find it. Don't worry. Just give her a little while.
The question I have though is when Becky does the amendment, it's not just striking that bill. You want to change the number also, right? On the,
I could round up some more and take a few bucks up. You can, there's that nickels and dimes. They rounded it up, but there's still some money here that you could round up, 5,000 here and 5,000 there, and you got it.
Catherine, I agree with you that the overall number is going to have to change somehow, or at least the overall number stays the same and we allocate it in a different fashion. But for now, the only thing
I was
we
asking
agreed to-
about the underwater preserve language. It's specifically that number, the 30, it was the governor proposed 25,000 the first year, the House went to 35,000. I didn't know if you wanted to take that back down to 25. That was my question.
Well, that's one of the questions we're wrestling with as to
Okay.
how to find the money for the walleye guys. And if we do that, that money we take it back down from. I know that this was a bargain struck with the House about giving that extra money to historic preservation in exchange for not reefing the Adirondack. At least that's the way it was told to me by the chair. But if we do take that money out of there, I would anticipate that that's going to go towards the walleye guys. That's more conversation to be had on that subject if we decide to do that. We may not. We may find it's someplace else and act accordingly, and then historic preservation can actually work on preserving one more wreck for the public to
Yeah.
enjoy.
You got stormwater planning and design and implementation. You know, you got what, 609 or department request, 1,470,000. You got, if you take 10,000 there, well, I like that. Stormwater planning, design and implementation in out years. What the hell they gonna miss? They're gonna miss $10,000.
I have a funny feeling that Catherine is going to come on to something that she remembers being a specific area that gained where it shouldn't have.
Yeah, give me a minute and I will go through it while Becky walks you through the language and we will,
Okay. So Becky, we're back to you. I'm starting on grant programs in section 5. And committee, again, be listening carefully to what you're hearing. Senator Mazza has already asked to have sections 11, 12, 13, and 14 as the sections that he reports on. And speaking of good-looking people, there's Eric.
Which Eric's that? You have a different Eric? Oh, I'm sorry.
Heard someone
Anyway.
talking about rounding.
Yes, we're going to get to that question. We're going to get it answered and we're going to get this bill done somehow, but
Let Eric find money. He can find it. Major maintenance.
No,
I
I mean, sir.
knew I'd get his attention there.
We talked about a parking garage, but I'm sure you heard that.
There will always be parking garages.
speaking of parking money, can we get back to the capital bill?
I'm ready when you all are. And in terms of the amendment, I just want to say I wouldn't know whether it would be instances of amendment or a strike all until you've made all the decisions. So I can just keep a list of all the changes that you want to make and then actually put it all together once you've made all the decisions.
Well, I don't know how many places we're going to have to nitpick money out of to get the walleye guys their 50 grand. But for language purposes, I only see the walleye guys in the Adirondack. I haven't heard anything else being of major importance. Although there is a conversation going on with the Senate Appropriations Chair about what to do with this 30 million that is in section 25, I believe. So that's it as far as I can tell right now, if we're going to make any changes. Whether that rises to the level of a strike all amendment, I guess I'm going to leave up to your expertise, but it would surprise me if it did.
Okay. So I can prepare based on that and then just see what happens after the committee makes decisions. I can always change it.
I suppose there's one other way of looking at it. This bill says as passed by the House, and if we do a strike, all that means we've got our stamp on it better than they, right?
That's one way. I mean, one, I can also just strike out a whole section. I think one thing with the capital bill is that sometimes it's hard to do instances of amendment when you're moving small amounts of money around because it's harder to explain, I think, on the floor perhaps, but I can
Okay.
also, we can discuss how you'd like to present it. That would be easiest for people to understand.
Yep.
So if I might,
Yep.
it might be Forest Parks and Recreation might be a place to look.
Uh-oh.
So and the reason I'm bringing that up is that to make it simpler, there was, they got a $65,000 increase in FY22 over the governor. So if you were taking it all from one place, that would make a simpler amendment also as well for Becky's perspective, that she's speaking to. So you haven't got it yet, but that is, keep your eye on that one.
Picked a bad one.
What's that going to do with Commissioner Schneider
Oh,
coming in?
God. That's a bad
Talking
one.
about his rustic cabin.
Well, he's got more than the governor requested. I'm just saying to you, he got more than he requested. So he'd be getting basically hit 4.9 million. They gave him 5 million.
Almost in the same venue too of what he's about. It's outdoor.
So
Something to think about, committee. Nice job, Catherine. How long did it take you to figure that out?
I wish he'd come visit my checkbook.
You knew about that before we began this meeting, right?
Well, he told us that the other day, but he also said he'd been shorted in the past. He just wants to play some sort of a catch up a little bit, but
well, he is shorted in the second year. I will tell you that the first year, FY22, he gets more than he requested. And the second year, he got less than he requested. So he will likely be back next year, but next year is a new year.
I will say that after my discussions with the chair of the House Committee, she suggested one of the first things to appease the other side was to take the money that had been increased for historic preservation underwater preserves, bring them back to the governor's recommend, as I understood it. And that would go a ways in order to appease whoever it is on that committee that's worked up
gave him the
about
money in the
this.
first place. The House gave him the extra money.
Yeah,
Who asked for it? Who was it?
The House offered it.
was there somebody on the committee though that led that?
You have to look at the tape, but it may have been the chair that suggested it.
Okay. So that way we wouldn't be as painful to Mike Snyder. And I think historic preservation would be appeased that they got the clearance for the Adirondack. They wouldn't be able to extend another wreck into their mix, but if they get the Adirondack, they're getting another wreck. So anyhow, let's get back to the language.
Okay. So Becky Wasserman, Legislative Counsel. So we left off in H 438 as passed by the House on page 7, section 5, which are the grant programs. So this section appropriates in subsection A in building community grants for FY22, and then in subsection B, FY23. So the grants in this section are all get the same appropriation, with the exception of the Human Services and Educational Facilities Competitive Grant Program. The committee has split this up 150,000 to specify one for human services and the other for education, to make sure that it goes equally to those two purposes. But otherwise, it's a 300,000 appropriation for each grant program. And these are the Historic Preservation Grant Program, the Historic Barns Preservation Grant Program. There's a Cultural Facilities Grant Program, the Recreational Facilities Grant Program, as I mentioned, the Human Services and Educational Facilities Grant, and then the Regional Economic Development Grant Program. And finally, there's the Ag Fair Program. And these programs each get an appropriation in FY22 and FY23.
Okay.
So the section 5 total is 4.2 million. There's 2.1 million per year.
Anybody with any questions, thoughts, comments?
No.
Guess not. We can keep going.
Okay. Section 6 is education. So in FY22 and FY23, there's 50,000 appropriated to the Agency of Education for funding emergency projects. So there's a total appropriation in this section of $100,000.
And just to reiterate for anybody that may have had this gloss over, this is strictly for emergency situations, not school construction as we had it at one point in time in this bill.
That's correct. There's suspension on the school construction aid program that used to be funded out of the capital bill. So the only thing that is still appropriated out of the capital bill related to school construction is this sort of small amount for emergency projects every year.
Okay. Don't see anybody with any questions.
Okay. So page 10, section 7, University of Vermont. There is 1.5 million appropriated in FY22 and FY23. This goes for construction, renovation, and major maintenance at any UVM facilities in the state.
Becky, can I just ask you, you referred to page 10. The document that I have that I printed out, the bill as passed by the House, has section 7 starting at the top of page 11. Can you tell me why that would be different?
I can't. Maybe because mine, I'm looking at the version on the web and it's a PDF version. I'm not sure if you had a Word version. Perhaps it's the formatting.
I'm not sure, but I'd like to be able to have each committee member get a hard copy of this that has pages that are consistent, so
Yeah,
we're on the same
I'm
page.
using this one right here, Chair. Is this the one that we're
You're
talking about?
using, what you're using, Russ, is the spreadsheet with the numbers on it,
I'm using.
which corresponds to the actual text bill itself. And I'm referring to the text bill that has all of the language in it associated with all of those itemized provisions.
Okay.
I want to make sure that every committee member has a hard copy that's consistent with each other. So when we divvy things up, everybody knows who
Right.
they're going to hand off the next section to and on what page can it be found.
Would we print that off, Chair, or was it something?
Well,
that you
I'm
sent
not
to us?
sure how it is. I've printed off something that's different from what Becky is reading. So I
Actually,
guess
mail us one, mail everybody one, it'd be great.
that
There
would
is-
be,
Okay.
Is
There's
it
an
the official
additional-
versus unofficial, maybe?
Yeah, yes, I think
Yeah.
that's where the problem is.
well, what I would like to have happen, and Denise, I don't know if you and Becky can make sure you're both on the same page with it, but
I'm on
Whoever-
Becky's page.
whoever needs to mail us a copy, we all should have a hard copy of the document. And the sooner we get that, the better, I think. Senator McCormick.
yeah. What was the fairly big document that was mailed to us in a big manila envelope a couple of weeks ago?
That was the second part of the HOK presentation.
Okay, but we've also got we had a spreadsheet that came with that. Or maybe I've just been keeping it in that envelope. I've been using the spreadsheet too, like Russ has.
Well, the spreadsheet is very easy to see the numbers,
Right.
Yeah,
but when you go to report on the bill, you're going to be talking about both that spreadsheet and the language that's attached to those numbers. The
Right.
language attached to those numbers is in a fairly thick, well, it's 33 pages long on the one I printed out. So we need to all make sure that you're on the same page, number one, which would be helpful for us to get a similar document. But also that when you go to look at your sections, you're not just talking about the numbers, but you're talking about the language that's associated with
Yeah,
those
yeah.
numbers. And in
Right.
case anybody asks you questions, you may very well need to refer to that language.
so you said you printed it out yourself. Have we been mailed hard copy or?
No,
That's what
No,
we're talking
okay.
about right now, to make sure that we are all mailed the same document and have the same.
Right.
papers.
Yeah.
Once we get it all figured
If-
out.
If yours is 33 pages, I think that you might be looking at the official version, and I am reading the unofficial version. So the official version has the strikeouts, the red Z's through it where there was amendments made. So for example, on page 5, there was a change.
Yes.
So I think,
Mine does have those strikeouts.
yeah, so I think that's the difference, is I'm looking at the unofficial version,
right.
which I think would be easier for everyone to read. So I can coordinate with Denise to have the copy room send that out to everybody.
That'd be great.
Okay, I can take care of that.
Did Jane
But
say
now-
that our bills have to be out, transportation institutions bill by next week, the middle of the week, latest?
Is that, Russ had sent me a text this morning indicating that that might be the case, but I have not been told that by Jane or by our pro temp.
Well, yeah, Jane said she had a conversation. I was a little concerned. She had a talk, the pro tem, and she told us this morning that the transportation bill has to be out the latest Wednesday. She wants it Tuesday. And she said, well, I said, well, why didn't they give us a little notice? I mean, you know, you're telling us 2 days left here. Well, she said, I don't know. Becca told me this morning that I have to have it in appropriations. No later than Wednesday, the T bill and the institution bill and the.
Right.
So that's.
She wanted to have the budget out.
Very clearly. So I said, God,
Wow.
you usually get a week's notice and say, this is what
Yeah.
the drop dead day. And,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden I wake up and I got 2 days. I got tomorrow and I think I can get it done, but that's not very far thinking. I mean, she
I
said,
don't think,
I'm gonna have it by Tuesday.
yeah, I would be surprised if we get this bill out tomorrow. It's possible, but we all have to have agreement on
Well,
this.
I wouldn't, I mean, if I get the T bill to them, they'll have that bill anyway, and you can get an extra day here because I think I can get the T bill out tomorrow, and they can work on the numbers and stuff, but,
No, we're
I
still
would
walking
shop-
through 20 pages yet to go here, so I
okay.
want to make sure we get that taken care of. And if we've got time tomorrow to get it accomplished, I'll take a stab at it.
Okay, maybe they didn't tell you about it, so they just told us.
Well, I had texted Joe once Jane had said that this morning, just to give him a heads up, just so.
Yeah, I was surprised
you-
when I got your text because
Well,
nobody
I knew
said
you-
anything to me at
I
all.
was surprised
Well,
this morning too.
I thought that you were in some committees there battling for the bill there,
Well,
so I
yeah,
thought it
well-
might be helpful for him to know.
Yep.
He's Jane's pet, so she'll give him some leeway, you know, I don't.
Yeah. Sure.
Seatmate over there, so that's,
Yeah, yeah.
Just remember, every forum that she and I go to, I always refer to her in introductions as the senior member of the Caledonia.
seeing you both think politically alike, so that's, well, you're
All
both,
right. We've diverted once again.
Well, in the meantime, I've just got confirmation that you will all be sent copies.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'm glad somebody
Um,
in this room is getting something accomplished here today.
Okay, so I'll just say the section numbers just so that we're all on the same quote unquote page. So section 7 is UVM and there is 1.5 million appropriated in each year for construction, renovation, and major maintenance at facilities that are owned or operated by the university.
Anybody have any questions on that section?
No, just, again, Chair, probably just a very moot point, but why did they go the extra, on the monies? Why did they go the extra million? Just because they wanted to?
I'm not looking at my spreadsheet, Russ. Was the governor's recommend a million less?
Yeah, the governor's recommend was, $2 million, $1 million each year, and they've gone a 1.5 for $3 million. So they're $1 million higher, $500,000 each year.
What they do on UVM?
Senator Benning,
Yes, Catherine.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say, it's about this, if you look at the state colleges, because often they're discussed together. So the state college was, got from the governor 2 million for a total of 4, and the UVM got 1 million for a total of 2. So if I remember correctly, maybe Eric or Becky can correct, but I think some of this was the discussion of trying to make UVM and the state colleges more similar. In the past, they used to get, it's been a number of years, they used to get the same appropriation.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
know
this
that
was an
they
attempt
did.
to bring it.
I know that they did because it was me personally who insisted we disconnect the two and give more money to the state colleges. We had this battle 10 years ago. And so the bigger problem that we've got right now is that the state colleges are in a serious financial situation, but we're talking about capital money here. So I'll let Jane deal with the other part of that conversation, but I do know that part of Jane's motivation in talking about sections 25 and 26 is to deal with this issue as well. I'm carrying it too far and people will get confused.
I want you to know that state colleges do not put any money of their own, have not put any money of their own towards capital improvements. Nothing. They have over $400 million in capital improvements, and they have not put a nickel of their own. Sooner or later, I feel bad for them, but they got to wake up and play college, because they've got to come up with some money of their own. They'll never, ever come out of this capital bill with $400 million. Anyway, that's my 2 piece.
Did you say that they had to wake up and play college?
Yes.
He did.
Yeah, let's play the game here. I mean, they got to come up, get their act together. If they're going to survive in colleges, they got to work with UVM or somebody, because they're not going to make it on their own. And you look back and Jeb had an idea, but I know that wasn't the right idea. But sooner or later, they got to do what they got to do. I don't know what they're going to do, but they're not going to get held out.
And I'm not arguing the fact that they're asking for $1 million more, 500. My sole part of this was I was going to tell the chair that, with permission from everybody, that I would report section 5 through 8 of the bill. And I just needed to know in my own brain, if the chair wanted me to do that, why, if I was asked why they got another extra million, what their thinking was, so I'd have something to answer back to.
I think Becky and Catherine will help you draft up some language, that we can use. They usually help us, not that they give you all the answers, but they'll give you some cheat sheets. So that's what they've done in the past, I hope.
The quick answer to that, Russ, is that the university has endowments that dwarf the state colleges.
Yeah.
And that's the quick answer. It's not an easy answer to explain, but it is a quick answer, and most people will suddenly move on to something else to talk about.
Yep.
Anybody else want to fight with Russ over sections 5 through 8? Because if not, I'm just going to write them down. Okay. I think we're up to section 8.
Sure. So section 8 is the Vermont State Colleges. So FY 22 and 23, the colleges are appropriated $2 million each year for construction, renovation, and major maintenance at facilities owned or operated at the colleges by the colleges. And then in the second year, the colleges are also receiving a $100,000 separate appropriation for infrastructure transformation planning.
Uh-oh, there's that planning money again. Okay, moving on to natural resources.
Sure. So natural resources is split up between the different departments. So in FY22, for DEC, there's there's 4 different appropriations. There's drinking water, the state revolving fund, there's dam safety and hydrology projects, and the Waterbury Dam Spillway Project, and then finally the Contaminants of Emerging Concerns Special Fund. In FY22, Forest Parks and Recreation is getting a sort of general $5 million appropriation for infrastructure rehabilitation. And then they're also getting separate appropriations for maintenance facilities at Gifford Woods and Groton Forest Park, the 3-acre stormwater rule compliance, and the rustic cabin construction program.
Was that the program that we'd be looking at or no?
It was the one, infrastructure, the $5 million number.
Okay,
I think they had, the proposal was 4.9 and they received 5 million in the first year.
so if we pulled 50,000 out of that, that should make up the walleye guys.
And they will still put them ahead of by 15,000 of ahead of where they were as the proposal. In the first year, I just want to be clear, the second year they are still short.
Yeah, but it would require us to give 25 to the walleye guys in the first year and the second year.
Yeah.
That solves our problem right there, Dick Mazza. I don't know if you,
What's that come out of again?
all right, so we're looking at section 9.
Yeah.
I've got it under B2, I'm
B1.
sorry, B1. And if you're looking at the spreadsheet.
Yep.
Um,
What is it listed in our state part? What?
It's line 74.
Yeah, Forest Parks and Recreation, State Parks Major Maintenance.
Oh, God. You're gonna take it out of his department?
Well, what the discussion is, he got more initially
Yeah,
from the governor's recommend.
right. Yeah.
And so if you take that money out, I'm not looking at my spreadsheet, but what was the governor's recommend initially?
It was 4,935,000.
Yeah,
Okay, so we take 50,000 out of that, he's still coming out ahead of the governor's recommend.
Oh, I know that he's coming out, but he made a case that that he could spend like 3 times that when the infrastructure that he has for, I don't know, it's gonna be tough. 700 and let's see, you got
Option 2, Dick, would be we take 40 out of that instead of 50, leave him the extra 10, and go over to the section on historic preservation where they got an additional 10 and take that back.
oh, God.
Something to think about. We'll keep talking and
Go ahead.
make
All right, go ahead.
internal decisions.
Yeah.
Okay, Beck, you're up again.
So we're still in section 9. In subsection C, there is I'm noticing there's a mistake is what I'm noticing. That I
Uh-oh.
think that it says FY23 appropriation. I think this is what Catherine had alerted me to this. It says FY23 appropriation to Fish and Wildlife. It should be FY22, so I'll need to fix that. But
Okay.
there's approximately 1.2 million appropriated to Fish and Wildlife for general infrastructure projects.
Did the
and
walleye
then-
guys have their own separate section, or do they fall into this category somewhere?
They've typically had their own line item.
Okay,
At least that's what I recall. I don't,
Yes.
Catherine, is it?
They've always been
Right.
their own.
okay.
And then the last appropriation in FY22 is to the Green Mountain Club, and that's 85,000 for conservation of forest land in the town of Johnson along the Long Trail Treadway, as well as for a future location of an off-road trailhead parking area.
All right.
And then Section 9 just moves on to the FY23 appropriations for each of those departments. So there's DEC, and the only change here from FY22 is that the contaminants of emerging concern special fund is not getting an appropriation in FY23. Forest, Parks and Recreation, the sort of general infrastructure rehabilitation, there's a line item for that in FY23 and for the rustic cabin construction program. And then finally in FY23, Fish and Wildlife also has another approximately 1 million for general infrastructure projects.
The Special Contaminants Fund not getting any money in this fiscal year. Do you know what the explanation for that was? Did they anticipate getting everything resolved, or what? What was that
My
about?
recollection was that they actually, the governor did not propose that they would get anything. So they were given, the House institution chose to give them the 500,000 in the first year.
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay, so section 10 is the clean water initiatives. The way this section has worked over the last few years is that there is an amount appropriated to specific projects in the first year of the biennium. And then in the second year of the biennium, the Clean Water Board is asked to come back and make recommendations on how to spend a pot of money that's being kind of held for the second year. So that is what this language is doing here as well. So for the first year, the specific projects that are receiving an appropriation are Agency of Ag is getting approximately 3.4 million for water quality grants and contracts. DEC, there's the Clean Water Fund, municipal pollution control grants, and then Agency of Natural Resources is receiving 500,000 for forestry access roads, recreation access roads, and water quality improvements. In FY22, VHCB is receiving about 900,000 for agricultural water quality projects and 1.3 million for land conservation and water quality projects. There is some language that has been, you'll see in subdivision 2 in subsection D, that VHCB has requested each year with respect to the water quality project grants. They ask that it's not used as part of the calculation for the maximum amount of a state water quality assistance award under Title VI, and that it doesn't, it's not used to satisfy a grant recipient's cost share requirements under those awards. I think there had been some confusion how those two would work together in the past. So the capital bill has included this language every year to clarify how those sort of maximum amounts and cost share requirements.
Okay.
And then in subsection E, you'll see a large sum, an $11 million appropriation to A&R in FY23. And that's just generally for clean water implementation projects. So this is the amount of money that you'll see in subsection G. The Clean Water Board is going to make some recommendations for inclusion in next year's, in the governor's proposed budget adjustment about how to spend that $11 million.
All right.
And then I just wanted to point out that in subsection F, this is referring to the amount appropriated in B2 of the section, and that is the FY22 appropriation for the municipal pollution control grants. Of the amount that's appropriated there, the language is directing DEC to prioritize approximately 1.7 million for legacy projects. And this is intended to help complete an older project, I believe in Brattleboro, to make sure that that is sort of prioritized for completion in FY22.
Just writing that down. Okay.
And then the final piece of language in this section is in subsection H. And this has been language that has been used also in the past for this clean water section. So it says that in FY22 and 23, any agency that receives funding from this section has to make sure, consult with the state treasurer to ensure that the projects are capital eligible.
All righty. Senator Mazza has indicated that he wishes to start with section 11. Senator Ingalls says he's going to end on section 8, which means somebody's got to do 9 and 10. And since both of you have served, Corey and Dick McCormick, both of you have served on natural resources.
Yeah.
Either one of you have a preference?
I'd be happy to. Yeah, I'd really like to do. I'd like to do 9 and 10.
Okay.
Joe, I'm willing to do the sections no one else wants.
Thank you, Corey.
Yep, no problem.
You're doing what, Corey?
I said I'm willing to do whatever sections no one else wants to do.
All right, well, I'm
I'm
going to
fine
plan
with
on
that.
taking sections 1 through 4 along with my introductory remarks about how this is all set up. We'll take a look at how much is left at the end of the day after Dick is done with 14. And if there's too much there, Corey, I'll pick up after where you decide you got enough under your plate. Don't mind that noise. My car warranty is up for
1981, right?
all right.
Mine's up too. I get those calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, it drives you crazy.
Oh,
You think we can make 11 through 14 while we're all sitting here?
I can do it.
Okay.
Go Becky.
Section 11 is military. There's 900,000 appropriated in each year for maintenance, renovation, and ADA compliance at state armories.
You're going to tell them all about where each one of these armories is getting what, right, Dick?
well, if they want me to,
Okay.
as long as Catherine gives it to me or Becca.
Section 12.
Section 12 is in the first year, the money is being appropriated to BGS for the Department of Public Safety for approximately 5.6 million for the Williston Public Safety Field Station, and then 500,000 for Middlesex Field Station. I'm pausing because I think Eric.
I was waiting for Eric to jump in, but I didn't hear him jumping in.
So I won't.
Eric,
I'll
do
just
you
let
need
him
me
jump
to
in.
jump?
We need some information on that, Eric, on those projects.
Eric might have a proposal for some language here, as I understand it.
Is this
Yeah.
related to this, or is this in the policy section?
This would be in the authorities.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh,
We'll
that's,
let
I
you-
wondered
I
why you
will
were
let
waiting
you
for
do
me.
your job then.
Eric, yeah, Eric wants to sell the present building before we build the new building.
That's what he wants to do.
That's the teaser. We'll wait until we get to the actual conversation, to let you know what else goes on from there.
Sometime Eric wants to do something that we don't want to do too.
Yeah, I killed the messenger.
I'll call his commissioner.
I keep trying not to get out in front of the bosses, and you guys keep
So too, we should.
shining light in
preserve.
my eyes.
Well, I think you, I won't say anymore. Sorry, go ahead.
So in the second year, there's 50,000 appropriated directly to public safety for a feasibility study for the Vermont Police Academy in Pittsford.
Oh, we love those studies. There we go.
Yes, sir.
This is a small one. This must be only like a
God.
week-long study, a week-long study.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna be a
Paper.
thing. I can drive down there and tell them what they want to know, and you know.
That would cost more, right?
Oh my God.
Oh, I know why you want to do section 13. You get all those fair people to think highly of you. I got it.
What's that? Which one? 13.
Agricultural food and markets includes the eastern states.
The grants are the other one. This one Eastern. Who cares about that one down there? That's not a home run there. I like the local fairs.
Okay. So back section 13.
Section 13, in FY 22 and 23, there's amounts appropriated to BGS for the Agency of Agriculture, and that's for major maintenance at the Big E, the Vermont building at the Eastern States Exposition. So there's 260 in the first year and then 350,000 in the second year.
Okay.
Section 14, there's 100,000 in each year for the Rural Fire Protection Task Force for the dry hydrant program.
I want to see you lead this section off, Dick, with the statement that, believe it or not, we can't saturate the dry hydrant problem.
I don't think they need any money. They just don't want to come off the system because I think they got plenty of money. Well, they said that anyway, but I don't think they want to come out of the program. But I don't think they can spend the money they're going to get.
It looked like walleye money to me, but I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
that's right. That's right. Because they weren't they just don't want to get off the list. They don't need this money.
Pause the existing.
We've been giving them money now since there's got to be. They got to be all dried up by now. I mean, come on.
Well, it's a topic of conversation.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a perfect one because they don't need. They weren't requesting the money. Well, they were and they weren't, and they have to maintain them now. Well, that's a different program. We don't do the maintenance on them.
We have, well, there are how many sections of this bill? 30?
Uh, 30, well, 31 with the effective date.
31. Well, we're about halfway done, and my thought process here was to stop reading the language. Eric, I don't know if you want to get into the conversation about the Williston concern, thought, language, whatever you want to call it. I know it's going to appear in a later section of the bill, but we've got a few minutes. We ought to talk about that. And if we're coming to a consensus on how to get the House appeased on the Adirondack question and get the walleye guys their money, that's another large part of the conversation to get out of the way. And it's only, I got 8 minutes before 3. So Eric, let's start with you. What's your pleasure on this presentation? Do you want to wait for the
If I could
wait for the
yield,
language, or do you want to wait for do it right now?
I think it might be more appropriate to address it in the context of the authorities section where it resides. And that would also give me an opportunity to potentially throw my commissioner or my deputy commissioner, who is our real estate specialist, in front of you. I feel I could potentially explain it, but it might be better to have the boss in.
Can we get him in tomorrow or her?
Yes.
And Becky, Denise, I want to make sure that you're hearing that part of the conversation, that we're going to at least deal with the Williston Barracks and what to do with it.
Okay, I am
That-
hearing it.
That probably ought to be on the schedule as an individual item, so we can at least alert the public that that conversation's coming up.
Okay,
That's a good piece. So
The other part of this conversation has to do with, what do you guys want to do to get the walleye guys back into the scheme of things?
I like that hydrant thing right there. I mean, if you guys are convinced that they really didn't need the money and leave the money back in with the Parks and Recreation, but
I'd go there first and then Parks and Recreation, but how much did we end up with the dry hydrant? What was the final, or what'd they end up with? I don't have that here.
they ended up
200.
with
I got 200.
100 each year?
Yep.
Yeah,
What did they
So it's-
request?
125 each year, 250 total.
Okay, so they cut it down to 100. So how
100
much
each
each year
year.
for walleye, just for 1 year? Do we have to have a 2-year commitment on walleyes or just 1 year?
Traditionally, we've had a 2-year commitment, if my memory serves.
Yeah.
And it was 25 each year.
Okay, so we should do a 2-year deal, what you're saying, versus a 1 year?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
They are, after all, the sweetest guys who come to testify before us looking for money.
No, they earn it. They work
Oh,
hard.
Well, I mean, yeah, they do some pretty amazing things with those fish. I mean, they're not an easy, I mean, it's made a difference up here in the fishery. I can tell you that.
But,
But Chair, if you didn't want to take it all from Parks and Recreation, wanted to skim a little bit off of that, off of the hydrants, but
The only concern is that they're presently, after the House, down quite a bit from where the governor's recommend was.
yeah.
Commissioner Snyder is considerably higher than what the governor's recommend was. The underwater preserves is higher than what the governor had recommended.
who did that come from? The underwater preserves? Who's asking for that? Which,
That's Laura Treichman's department.
That was a compromise of not sinking the ferry, right? They were gonna
Right.
say, well, we're gonna open 3 more sites, so we'll give you $10,000 there.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna sink the ferry.
why don't you check with her, Mr. Chair? Why don't you just have contact with her and see what she saw? What her
Well,
thoughts are?
You're talking about Laura
Yeah.
Treichman?
I mean,
You can always ask that question. I'm sure she'll be happier with more money. My thought process is if we simply cut her back to what the governor's recommend was, I suspect she'll be happy with that, but that's only, I believe, 10,000.
well, there's other areas we can pick up, but we got some areas here.
Well, you could split the difference with Mike Schneider and give him more than what the governor had recommended, but less than what the House gave him.
I like this clean water revolving fund. It's got $1,563,891.
The only thing about those, I would just say, is those are the grants, the federal matching grants. I think that's why they have, you can't, those are harder to mess with.
They couldn't round it off.
Yes.
They tried to do it this year for me. They beat me to it. They're so proud of themselves. Okay.
Well,
I gotta-
options
I gotta
are
talk
not
to
that.
Alice. I gotta talk to Alice.
Let's start with this question. Should the walleye guys get 25 each year?
Yes.
I don't hear anybody saying no to that. So that would put them back to where we were. Russ, if you're talking, you're muted.
I'm sorry, Joe, I didn't hear what you just said. I apologize.
Sure. The first question is, should we give the walleye guys the same amount of money that they've had traditionally? That's 25 a year.
I'm a yes on that.
Okay, I'm in favor of that. So at the very least, that's a 3-2 decision on the committee. I see Dick McCormick shaking his head affirmatively. So We want the walleye guys to get 50. We got to come up with 50. You have Commissioner Schneider getting,
We're back to Snyder. Huh? You really want to screw him
no,
out?
I'm just laying out the options.
Yeah,
He
right.
is one potential place because he got a lot more than what he was asking for.
Take it from the state colleges. That'd be a good one right there. Nothing wrong with that. See how you jump onto that one.
There's at least two of us here that might oppose that.
Catherine, find us some more money.
I think the state, I'm not sure Catherine can check, but I think the state college's transformation planning might not have been in the governor's recommend, but I'm not.
It wasn't, but it is, I think, essentially putting a placeholder because the state colleges came in and testified that they need more transformation money. And that I think that was a place to leave it in to talk about next year, but that.
They've been wanting more money since I was a kid, for crying out loud. Jesus,
that,
the sucking sound. But we got to protect Joe's colleges there. It's just,
Well, I don't want to trade it off for a couple of rustic cabins, that's for sure.
I know. Let's sleep on this one.
Okay. We'll sleep on it. I got 3 o'clock. You guys done looking at numbers?
Yeah, I'm done. You?
Well, I could talk about this for the
Well,
next
I
6
think we
hours.
got to meet with the house again, a joint session, and spend the evening and the night.
Cuddle up
Remind
with
me
a
next time,
blanket.
I'm gonna bring my overnight bag.
Oh my God.
You know, I got to tell you that last night after we ended at 6:30, I got onto a Zoom conference with all of the domestic violence advocacy groups.
Oh my God.
And I was on that for 2 hours solid. In fact, it was about 2 hours and 10 minutes. I was the only senator, and I was one of maybe 3 males out of about 50 people on the screen. And of course, they didn't like my position on either the gun bill that's coming at us or H-128, which is known as the Gay Panic Defense Bill. And it was an interesting 2 hours, to say the least. But by the time I was done with that, I was as zoomed out as you could possibly imagine.
I bet.
We have a caucus tonight, don't we? McCormick and
Oh, don't we have something going on at 4? Oh, you guys don't. I do. I've got 4:30 with Alice Emmons and Eric and Commissioner Fitch.
ooh. What's that all about? You got a big meeting with a heavy hit. Oh, you can solve that problem at 4:30 then. You're all set.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start talking about the direction we're all moving in with the prison system.
Oh,
My sense is they're leaning towards option C for those of you that are following along in your playbooks.
The thing the Democrats are doing at 5 is not a caucus. It's just a bunch of friends getting together.
oh, okay. Thank you.
That's what it is.
So what does
Really,
that mean?
it's-
There's 4 of them
Really?
going to show up out of the 20, the friends?
It's a bell.
All right. I'm ready to take a break.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Works for
So
me.
Catherine and Becky, you guys can show up tomorrow too?
yes.
He can't wait.
And Eric, you're
You
already
can.
on the schedule, so. All right,
Here for you, sir.
we'll see
I'm
you
gonna go
there.
drive my my hybrid on which I get over 50 miles an hour. So eat your hearts out, old boys. What's that?
50 miles an hour, you said?
No,
Per
I
gallon?
did that. I meant 50 miles per gallon. So eat your hearts out. We'll see you, old boys.
Denise gets to
Alright.
be in the State House.
When?
Isn't that?
No.
No,
Oh,
that's
that-
not the
the-
State House.
Thing behind you looks like something. Oh, no,
It
you're right.
is.
That's something else.
It's a historic train for the, was it bicentennial? Steam train.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of a boondoggle, but anyway, it's funny. It's during the Salmon administration, so it's really old.
Denise, you can take us off YouTube and let's
Yes,
talk
sir.
logistics after that.
Okay.